It's a pleasure to be with you again. My name is Jason Dexter, and today we're continuing our study of the book of Revelation. Now, a lot of times when you study Revelation, you will notice really a lot of complex ideas. There's bowl judgments and seal judgments and trumpet judgments. There's beasts, and in this chapter, in chapter 17, there's a beast and a great prostitute, and there's a lot of symbolic words and imagery that can be quite hard to understand. And that sometimes makes us not even want to study it or to think that this is not very practical or not very relevant to our lives today. But I believe that every single part of the Bible is practical and is relevant, and God wrote it and put it there for a reason. He wants us to take those lessons as we dig and study into His Word, and then take those lessons and apply them to our lives. So today, as we continue our study in Revelation 17, that's what we're going to try to do. Take these fairly difficult to understand concepts, first understand them, and then see how can we apply them to our lives. So this chapter is titled The Great Prostitute and the Beast. We will study it in 4 sections. I will start with verse 1 through 6. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute, who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on earth have become drunk." And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. When I saw her, I marveled greatly. So I want to take a moment and just step back and remember the timeline which we've gone through in the book of Revelation. We've seen 21 different sets of judgments on this world. 7 seal judgments, 7 trumpet judgments, and just finished in chapter 16, the 7 bowl judgments, when the angel said, "It is done. It is done." The time is very, very near. The end of the world, so to speak. The leaders and the system and the government and the religion and all the things set up in defiance against God are nearly finished. Now, that's what the angel is about to show John here in this chapter. So chapter 17 is not just like a snapshot in time, but rather it shows the progression throughout the 7-year tribulation of the relationship between the prostitute, the beast, and the 10-king alliance, the world, all of which will finally end in judgment. So rather than chapter 17 being the next step chronologically from chapter 16, basically, John is zooming out again and seeing how this prostitute, this false religion, how did it progress throughout the 7-year period of the tribulation. And so really focusing on the characters in this chapter rather than the timeline. So the main character in this chapter is the great prostitute. The great prostitute. So who or what is this great prostitute? Now, verse 5 identifies her. It says, "On her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations." Now, Babylon represents the evil world order that throughout history has set itself up in opposition against the Lord. From the beginning, Babylon was an evil city with an evil symbol. The original Babel, they built the Tower of Babel, which was a symbol of mankind unifying together, actually in direct defiance and rebellion against God's commands. He had told them to multiply and be fruitful and spread throughout the earth. But people said, "No, we're not going to spread. We're going to stay in this one place, and we don't really need God." So Babylon was the first place where people attempted to start this one world religion, which was man's religion. Man is the top, not God. And this one world government to unite all people under one banner. Now, chapter 18, as we will look at in the next lesson, continues detailing the fall of Babylon. So it seems that Babylon in Revelation is composed of two entities. Now, the first entity here in chapter 17 is the evil religious system. And the second entity in chapter 18 is the economic system. So, the great prostitute, in my understanding, is a one-world religion that will emerge in the end times. Throughout the Old Testament, prophets often describe Israel's pursuit of other gods, including idols, as harlotry. For example, in Jeremiah 3, verse 6, the Lord said to me in the days of King Josiah, have you seen what she did, that faithless one, Israel, how she went up on every hill and under every green tree, and there played the whore? And I thought, after she has done all this, she will return to me. But she did not. And her treacherous sister Judah saw it. She saw that for all the adulteries of that faithless one, Israel, I had sent her away with a decree of divorce. Yet her treacherous sister Judah did not fear, but she too went and played the whore. Because she took her whoredom lightly, she polluted the land, committing adultery with stone and tree. Committing adultery with stone and tree, with idols made of stone and made of wood. So what is a prostitute? A prostitute is someone who seduces a person away from his commitment and causes him to become faithless. Normally speaking, it refers to a sexual relationship outside of marriage. And a prostitute uses outward beauty to entice. And at the same time, she makes many promises about the thrills, the fun, the pleasure that is to come. All of these promises prove to be lies, and those who believe her go to their own destruction. Now, false religions are often described as prostitutes in the Bible, and they're described that way because a false religion entices people away from the narrow path that God has for them and onto the broad road of destruction. They use all types of methods, including false promises, to seduce people. And the result of false religion is destruction. Now, there may appear to be many different religions in the history of the world. These can be reduced to the one true religion that we find in the Bible and all false religions. Now, these myriad of false religions were all spawned by Satan to mislead. So throughout history, there are many little prostitutes, so to speak, false religions which turn people away from the truth of God. And they appeal to different aspects of people's fleshly and carnal nature. Now, during the end times, all of these false religions will unite under one banner. The great prostitute will be the culmination of all of these. So throughout history, Satan keeps bringing out different false religions, different cults, different idols, all different kinds of philosophies and ideas, which he uses them to try to pull people away from the Lord. Now, in the end time, all of these will be brought together under one banner, the last and the greatest, the final attempt by Satan to lure people away from God and bind them to his false religion. Now, there have been many movements in history toward a one-world religion. None have been successful as yet, but efforts are gaining steam. Now, in many cultures, tolerance and inclusivity are popular buzzwords. Of course, we know that biblical Christianity will not be tolerated. That's the one thing that won't be tolerated, because this new one-world religion will seek the total destruction of the followers of Christ. And we can see that in verse 6. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. So this false religion will incorporate all of the false religions in the world and tolerate every kind of idea out there except the truth of Jesus Christ. Now, truth by definition is narrow. Religions with different beliefs cannot both be true. So it really makes no logical sense. How can a Muslim and a Hindu and a Buddhist and a Taoist and a Taoist and an atheist, how can all of these come under one banner and claim unity? Because their beliefs are diametrically opposed to one another. Well, the simple answer is truth will not be considered important at that time in the future. And already we see that. Truth is not considered important now. What's considered important is so-called tolerance and inclusivity. pleasure and indulgence will be glorified over truth. So what will this new religion look like? Some kind of Muslim religion or Hindu religion or something else? We really don't know exactly what it will look like. And we don't know the exact path it will take to get there. But we do know the destination. The destination is this one world religion which persecutes all true believers in Christ. So as we consider that, we need to ask ourselves, what is the application for us? What can we learn from the fact that the world is going this way towards finally this one world false religion? Well, believers need to guard the truth. We must stand firm against ecumenism, guarding the purity of the church. This attempt to bring all kinds of churches and all kinds of beliefs and all kinds of things under one banner and every way is equal, in fact, is a lie from Satan to undermine the truth. Now, we should seek to preserve unity with real believers. We must not tolerate false doctrine or false teaching. Now, certainly there are some minor doctrines that believers do not agree on, including eschatology, how to interpret Revelation. We have unity on these points because Christ is the center. But where teachings and doctrines go directly against God's word, and especially attack the divinity and the humanity of Jesus Christ, we cannot tolerate these things. So we cannot tolerate to the point of compromising on fundamental biblical issues. So we have to guard against this steady creep of secularism into the church and say, as Paul did, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God. The world wants to make you ashamed of the truth. Do not be ashamed of the truth. Now, what is this prostitute offering? This false religion, what does it offer people? Now we see in the first 6 verses what it's offering. Verse 2 says, the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality with her, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on earth have become drunk. And then again, down in verse 4, the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. So what's this prostitute, this one world religion is offering is sexual immorality. The new world religion will be a filthy, disgusting abomination. It will be a thinly veiled, or even more likely, totally unveiled invitation to every type of sexual indulgence. Now, already way back in the Old Testament, the Canaanite religions practiced this. And also in New Testament times, in Corinth, they practiced this, where temples to these idols, to these false gods, would employ many temple prostitutes. And actually prostituting yourself with one of these temple workers was considered to be an act of worship. So Satan was saying you can actually worship God through prostituting yourself. That's how wicked the religions were at that time. So students of history should not be surprised that in the future it will be like this, but even multiplied much, much more. Isaiah 5:20 says, woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. This is what's going to happen. And in the end times, Romans also speaks of it. People will call evil good and good evil. So the most evil thing, sexual immoralities and indulgences of every kind, will be considered good and holy and worshipful. Students of history, again, should not be surprised. The great prostitute will only level up the seduction that all of the little prostitutes in history have already engaged in. Here is a quote from Backgrounds of Early Christianity by Everett Ferguson. And what he says is, all kinds of immoralities were associated with the Greco-Roman gods. Not only was prostitution a recognized institution, but through the influence of the fertility cults of Asia Minor, Syria, and Phoenicia, it became a part of the religious rites at certain temples. Thus, there were 1,000 sacred prostitutes at the temple of Aphrodite at Corinth. End quote. So actually, in Corinth, in Greece, to be called a Corinthian meant to be immoral because they practiced immorality as a religion. Now, Greek mythology is filled with the tales of their gods' sexual promiscuity. Roman cities, including Ithaca and Heliopolis, contained temples where sacred sex or cult prostitution was practiced. Not only in Greece and in Rome, but historically in Hindu temples, young girls are given in ritual marriage to a Hindu god and then work in the temple as prostitutes. Aztecs of Central and South America practiced sacred prostitution and their religious rites. Incas sometimes dedicated young boys for homosexual intercourse with the chieftains of their temples. The Canaanites practiced cult prostitution, and there's evidence that in Sumer and in Babylon, they also had variations of this. So what you see is throughout history, Satan has been doing this again and again because it's effective. It's effective to tell people you can be spiritual through being carnal. You can be spiritual through being fleshly. You can be spiritual by fulfilling your most base fleshly desires. It's in fact good to give in to the flesh and to give in to your lust. Those kinds of promises by Satan are very, very attractive to people who want to do that and don't want to control themselves at all. What's going on here? It's simple. These are false religions, and false religions are spawned by Satan. He's the father of lies. Evil is called good, and good is called evil. He seeks to pervert what God intended for good, and he uses man's appetite for sex to bind him to sin and chain him to the kingdom of darkness. Ecclesiastes 1:9 says, "What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun." Solomon says there's nothing new under the sun. The same strategies that Satan has used to tempt people over and over in the past, he will use again because they're effective. The seductions of this great prostitute in the end times are merely the climax of this age-old battle between good and evil. The main difference, though, is that in the past, these things were done secretly behind closed walls. Now, in the Revelation times, in the end times, they'll be done openly and brazenly, and they'll be praised as being progressive and liberating. We see much of this already in the 21st century, where ideas and practices which 20, 30, 40 years ago were considered shameful and sinful are now being not only accepted, but widely promoted in the media and on the news and being celebrated with all kinds of pride things. So in today's age, Satan is using the same methods to entice and trap people. What are some practical ways to protect yourself against the temptation of sexual immorality? This is not only something that's going to be going on in the end times, it's going on right now. Satan wants to attack you in this area and also to attack your family. How will you protect yourself? How will you protect your family? How can knowing the truth help you to win this battle, even in your own mind? You could even pause the video for a moment and consider this question, how to protect yourself from this temptation. If you can think of any practical ways, go ahead and write them down. But the key and the most important thing is that we need to draw close to Christ. Christ hates sin. He's holy. The closer we get to Christ and our relationship to him, the farther we will get from sin. We need to come back to the cross again and again and ask him for his help and his protection. All right, let's come back to the passage in verse 3. It says, "This woman was sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names." This beast appears to be the one world government of which the antichrist will be the head. So what does this show? This shows that the one world government and the one world religion, that is the beast and the prostitute, will be allied. They will work together to seduce people. and to wage war against Jesus and his followers. Now, the woman is also pictured up above in verse 1 as sitting on many waters. Sitting on many waters. So this is showing that she is dominating the world and seducing leaders from many nations. And now she's depicted as sitting on the beast, who is in turn over the world. So what this shows is all of the evil concentrated in her is now concentrated on the beast. They are yoked together in an alliance. Now we'll see at the end of this chapter that the alliance is a temporary one. The Antichrist and his government will then turn against this one world religion after he's done using it to accomplish his purposes. Now take a look at the appearance of this prostitute. It says the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold, jewels, and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. So at first glance, the prostitute looks beautiful. She's rich. She's living a life of opulence. The idea of being clothed with purple shows the luxury that is connected with her. According to the world's standards, she's highly successful. Now, the implication is those who join with her can be successful too. And if you yoke yourself to her, if you follow this religion, you can have your wildest fantasies, your wildest wishes will be fulfilled. Sin is like that. It always makes some lofty promises, but none of them will be fulfilled. Now, the character of this woman stands in stark contrast with a woman of God. She's exactly the opposite of what a woman of God in the Bible is praised for. You shouldn't be surprised that the Antichrist is exactly the opposite of God. Now, 1 Peter 3 and 4 talks about that, about woman of God. It says, do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry, or the clothing you wear. But let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. Application time. How are we going to take these concepts and apply them to our life today? Well, women of God would do well to take note of these worldly values and make sure they are not being influenced by the world system. Don't just focus on external beauty. Focus on your inner character and your spirit. External beauty fades away, but the inner spirit is imperishable. Evaluate the amount of time you spend on makeup or hair, fashion, design, clothing, cosmetics, spas, and so on. Compare that to the amount of time you spend in God's Word and on God's kingdom. And the same is true for men who might spend so much time doing frivolous activities, pursuing, just building up their body and their image and all of these things. We need to consider what is most important. And what is most important is our character. Are you building up your character, or are you just spending more time trying to look good in the world's eyes? Now we see in verse 6, this woman was drunk with the blood of the saints, the martyrs of Jesus. While this religion will likely boast about its tolerance, its peace, it will be anything but. It will not be a religion of peace, but it will practice my way or the highway. Those who don't buy in, that is believers in Christ, will be brutally rounded up and massacred. Why will the followers of Jesus be targeted? Because Satan knows they are the enemies. They are the ones he needs to watch out for. They're the ones who have the power of God in them. And this shows us, we can see something of this happening in the world even now too, where many things are tolerated, but truth from Scripture is not. So we're going to go forward to verses 7 through 11 as that talks about the beast. I'll go ahead and read that here. But the angel said to me, why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And the dwellers on earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. They are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. One is, the other has not yet come. And when he does come, he must remain only a little while. As for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. Okay, simple to understand, right? Whew, wow, what a challenging passage that is right there. Whew, let's go through it piece by piece. So it says the beast that you saw was and is not and is about to rise. And it mentions that several times. Now, there are several theories as to what this statement means. Some believe it's a reference to the Roman Empire, which existed and then faded out and will exist again as a revived Roman Empire. Others take this as a reference to the Antichrist, who will seemingly be killed and then come back to life. And we see that in Revelation 13:3. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. So this supposed resurrection will be so miraculous that the citizens of the world will marvel. Now the wording is very similar to here in chapter 17, verse 8, where it says the beast was and is not and is about to rise. And then it says the dwellers on earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come. So the same wording is used in Revelation 13 and also here in Revelation 17, that the people will marvel. So considering the context in these two phrases, which are so similar, it seems to me that this interpretation is more likely the correct one. Through some kind of satanic power, the Antichrist will resurrect or appear to resurrect. That apparent miracle will convince the world of his power and be a catalyst for causing the world to worship him, to marvel. Now, immediately following this event in Revelation 13, the world starts to worship the dragon. Now, here in Revelation 17, this event occurs right before the prostitute, false religion, is put down, paving the way for the one world religion to turn into unveiled Satan worship. So what it looks like is that the first half of the tribulation, this one world religion is uniting all the religions of the world under its banner, except for Christ, that is. And then at some point, about the halfway mark of the tribulation, the Antichrist will appear to die, will appear to resurrect again, causing the people of the world to marvel and to worship him. And at that point, he will turn around and he will betray and destroy this one world religion and take all of the worship for himself and for Satan. At the end of this passage, we will come to that part where he, in fact, betrays this one world religion and turns against this great prostitute. So again, there's a lot of possible interpretations of this. This is my understanding. Of course, I could be wrong. Only unbelievers will marvel. We should take note of that only those whose names have not been written in the book of life will marvel. So believers whose names are in the book of life, they will have their eyes opened by the Holy Spirit. The power of God will prevent them from being deluded and instead give discernment. Now, one of the ways God keeps our eyes open to the truth is his word. These very prophecies in Revelation, which are studied by believers, warn his people about what is to come, so that when it does come, they won't be taken in. So there's an application for us and a reminder. Those with Christ are not blinded. He gives us light. He shows us the truth. He gives us discernment. So we should carefully study his word. All the things we see in this world, whether through the news or through the media or in newspaper, wherever we read it, we should read it with a healthy amount of skepticism and with discernment, to examine situations in the world through prayer, through scripture, to test every spirit, so that we will be sure to remain standing on the rock of Christ. Here in Revelation, all the people of the world except believers get carried away and follow after these false religions and these fake miracles. but believers should not. And in fact, through the strength of Christ, believers will not. Praise God. He gives us knowledge of the truth so that we don't have to be blown around by the wind of culture around us. Now, verse 9 says this calls for a mind with wisdom. And then it talks about 7 heads and 7 mountains, 7 kings, and so on. So believers who study the scriptures and look to the Lord for understanding will be able to understand the challenging symbols about to be depicted. 7 heads and 10 horns. Both of these refer to sets of rulers, but they are different sets of rulers. The 10 rulers are future rulers. It says in verse 12, the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power. They are 10 kings who were future to John's day, and I believe still future to our day today. However, the 7 horns, the 7 rulers are kings, and in the vision John hears, 5 of whom have fallen. 1 is, and the other has not yet come. So the 10 rulers are future rulers. They will rule under the authority of the Antichrist. They will give all their power and all their authority to him. Now, either the world or a specific region of the world will be united under these 10 regions, under these 10 rulers, which will allow the Antichrist to rule them much easier than would now be the case with 249 countries in the world today. Now, the 7 kings, they are a different set. It says that they are represented by 7 mountains. A mountain shows power and authority. So these are not just normal rulers, but the highest of rulers. Now, unlike the 10 kings, who are all future to the time of John, only 1 of these 7 was future to John. 5 of them had already come and gone by the time John received his vision. 1 of them was likely currently ruling when John received his vision. The other was yet to come and will be the Antichrist. Now, this passage has created an endless amount of debate among Christians. There are many, many theories about who these 7 rulers are. Here are a few of the common theories. The 7 refers to 7 kingdoms who ruled over Israel: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, and 7, the revived Roman Empire. Another theory is the 7 refers to 7 kingdoms who ruled over Israel, but a different 7 kingdoms: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, and the Ottoman so-called Turk Islamic Caliphate. Another theory is the 7 refers to Roman emperors. Several different sets of emperors have been proposed, including August, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, Nero, Vespasian, and Titus. 7. Another theory is the 7 refers to 7 kings who reigned over Jerusalem and Babylon from the 4 empires mentioned in Daniel. And those who hold to this theory would say only the first king from a dynasty or empire is added to the list. So the 7 are Nebuchadnezzar, Cyrus, Alexander the Great, Ptolemy III, Antiochus, Seleucid, Titus, and the future Antichrist. All right, that was a lot of names and a lot of theories. Now, each of the above has different variations that are similar. Now, since the text specifically says that these are kings and not kingdoms, the first 2 explanations seem, at least to me, not to fit. If we take it at face value, these are historical kings, and 1 yet future, who will be connected to the prostitute of false religion. However, it's really, really hard for us to understand exactly what this means or who it refers to. So I have a theory about it that's maybe the 4th explanation is the closest to the correct interpretation, but I hold that with a grain of salt, meaning I'm not even convinced about what I think is probably the correct interpretation. It's very complicated. So when we take these complicated ideas that are admittedly very difficult, complex, hard to understand, and believers disagree, what can we actually get out of it today? And I'll tell you, this is one reason why I was quite nervous to study the book of Revelation at the beginning, is, wow, it's so complicated and it's hard to understand. But what I get from this passage here and this point is very simple. God is sovereign. He's on the throne. He's bringing history to its planned conclusion. All of the rulers, all of the kingdoms, all of the thrones, all of the political leaders of today, everything is subject to God's perfect plan. Now, many of the rulers of this world are connected to an evil system, and these finally will set themselves up against God, and they do set themselves up against God around the world today, and all will finally face judgment. So it's easy to look at politics in the world now and get discouraged about the political systems we see and the corruption and the evil and the failure of politicians to do what they were voted into office to do, and all the complaints, valid complaints we have against political leaders. But in the end, it is wise for us to remember, prudent for us to remember that God is on his throne. He is sovereign, and all of this is part of his plan, and he's going to bring it to fruition. So what's the application for us? Trust. Trust in God. And part of trust is don't worry. Don't be afraid when you look at the world around you and see how chaotic and how messy it is. Trust in God and in his plan. All right, let's come forward to verses 12 through 14. This is about the alliance against the Lamb. In the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast. These are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And those with him are called and chosen and faithful. All right, so the 10 kings will give their authority for 1 hour to the beast. They will receive their authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast. So for a period of time, 1 hour, a short period of time, these 10 kings and the beast, the antichrist, will have total control and authority over the world. Now, it's hard to imagine how a king or a world leader will actually turn his power over to someone else. We just don't see that very often. World leaders, they like to keep power for themselves. But look in verse 13. It says, these are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. So they will have power and authority, and then they will give theirs to the beast. So probably in essence, their weapons of war, their economies, their money, through taxes, whatever, through every way, they're going to support this Antichrist. And presumably, all of the power and authority they have will be transferred over to his control. And then what will happen? Well, they will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them. Amen. The Lamb is going to win. Now, throughout Revelation, we see this epic battle of good versus evil. And we really see that again and again in Revelation, good versus evil. It's not a new battle. It's been waged already for millennia. Yet during this future time, it will be more public, and everyone will have to consciously choose a side. These 10 rulers will throw in their lot with the devil and declare war against King Jesus. It will be a colossal mistake, and it will be a colossal mismatch. Jesus will win. The outcome is never in doubt. How could it be? He is the Lord of lords and he is the King of kings. Now, believers also have their part to play. It says that those with him are called and chosen and faithful. So what is your role in this war? Very simple. Your role is be faithful. He who is faithful in a little thing will be faithful also in much. Be faithful today so that in the future, as persecution and pressure increase, you will be ready. So what we see in this passage is this battle, a battle between truth and false religion, a battle between Jesus and Satan, a battle between the Lamb and the devil. You're in the middle of this battle. Like it or not, you have to join sides. You have to pick. Are you going to join the world? Are you going to join the world's evil system? Or will you join God and be faithful to him? Now, we're going to go forward to the last several verses, verses 15 through 18. The angel said to me, "The waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages." Right? So I said that this one world religion, this prostitute sat on many waters. It means she was over many, many different peoples and nations. It shows this religion coming together from all different people groups. And then verse 16, "The 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute." So the political leaders, the 10 kings, and the antichrist the prostitute was riding on the beast, but now the beast will hate the prostitute. And it says, "They will make her desolate and naked, and devour her flesh, and burn her up with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose, by being of one mind, and handing over their royal power to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth." So the 10 kings are going to destroy the prostitute, this unholy alliance between the beast, that is the Antichrist, and the one world religion will not last. That end time religion, more than any in all of history, will be visibly evil and satanic. It will encourage people to have every kind of sexual indulgence. This one world religion, we can say this, it will be very thinly veiled Satanism. But a thin veil is too much for Satan. Satan doesn't want any veil. He doesn't want to be worshipped behind an idol or worshipped behind a false religion. He won't want to pretend to be something good anymore to get worship. Now, he's gone by many names in the past, Molech and Baal and Zeus and all of these false gods, which Satan and his demons are behind these idols. But no more. His goal will be to be directly and publicly worshipped as God. So this one world religion and whatever leader will be over at that time will incur his wrath and rebellion. He will use this religion for a period of time to control the people of the world, to bring them together under his power, under his banner. But when he is done using it, he will devour this one world religion. He will discard it and he will rip it to shreds. It says that he will make it desolate and naked and devour her flesh and then burn her up with fire. So there's no mercy whatsoever toward this one world religion and towards its leaders. Now, likely this is referred to Revelation 13:4. They worship the dragon. This shows his coming out party at the midpoint of the tribulation. For he had given his authority to the beast. And they worship the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, and who can fight against it?" Now, very likely it's at this point, at the middle of the tribulation, at this fake resurrection event, that all visible signs of false religion will be destroyed, including mosques, temples, churches, synagogues. Every kind of religious symbol will be destroyed, devoured, and burnt. And then Satan himself will basically demand the world's worship. So we see Satan's character. He's in the business of using people. And if given the chance, this is what he wants from you. He wants to squeeze everything out of you. And then after he's squeezed everything out of you and used you as much as he can to throw you away like rubbish. That's what he wants to do. Why would anyone want to follow such a leader as this? He will use the leaders of this one world religion for his own purposes. Then when he's done, they'll be killed. It's very similar to the classic bad guy movie. In these movies, viewers watch incredulously as people make shady deals with the bad guys. And you're like, well, why would you make this deal with the bad guy? You know he's going to betray you. You know he's not going to keep his word. But they always trust and think, oh, it'll work out. At the end of the story, they're always betrayed. And then they're killed and the bad guys take everything. So Satan is a terrible master and partner. He does not keep his word. And his goal is your ultimate destruction. In every way, Satan is the Antichrist. Jesus loves and cares and nourishes, restores, forgives. Jesus is compassionate. He's a good and kind Lord. Satan is the opposite in all of these things. Now, if you look at verse 17, it says, "For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose until the the words of God are fulfilled. God is sovereign. He is working to bring his plan to ultimate completion. These kings are not intentionally following his plan, but they are his puppets. They're not robots. They're making these decisions, and they're responsible for them, but they're playing right into God's hands. Isaiah 46:10 says this, declaring the end from the beginning, and from the ancient times things not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will accomplish all my purpose, calling a bird of prey from the east, the man of my counsel from a far country. I have spoken, I will bring it to pass. I have purposed, I will do it. God's sovereignty is so amazing that he uses people who make their own decisions, many of them wrong, sinful decisions, and he uses those sinful people making sinful decisions to bring about his perfect plan and to fulfill his prophecy. So in this chapter, we see Satan and his evil plans using false religion to tempt and lure and entice people into sin. But then after he uses them, he will devour them. And we see the road that this goes on. All of those who follow this way will be judged one day. So there's a war between the Lamb and between Satan. We need to choose our side. We're also reminded in this chapter of the ways that Satan tries to tempt people with buzzwords like tolerance and inclusivity and all of these things, and to tempt people with sexual indulgence, saying you can enjoy yourself, you can chase after these pleasures, you can follow the most basic desires of your flesh. You don't need to control yourself, you don't need to say no, you don't need to care about consequences. Just do it, just follow it, just enjoy. That's his pitch. That's what he tries to get people to do. And many people follow those lies and they are bound in sin. So I hope that you, as a believer in Christ, will put on your spiritual glasses to be led by the Spirit, to be led by the truth from Scripture, to see through the lies. To see through the lies. There are so many things in culture which are attacking God in his ways. And families of God, we need to see those things, we need to expose them, and we need to stand for truth so that we will not fall under these attacks. I hope you enjoyed this study on Revelation 17, a very challenging study with a lot of complex ideas, but it reminds us that God is sovereign, we need to be faithful, and we need to stand up for truth and not fall into temptation. I would invite you to join us in the next video as we will study Revelation chapter 18. Until then, God bless. See you next time.